My parents kicked me out because of my sister. 6 years later, they're asking for help to support her and her four young children. I, a 32-year-old woman, am currently in charge of significant commercial development projects around New England as a successful architect at a prominent Boston firm. Nathan, my 34-year-old Fianc, works as a project manager in sustainable development. Our wedding is scheduled for the following year. On the surface, my life appears ideal. I have rewarding work, a wonderful relationship. However, a complex family situation that recently reached a breaking point has left me questioning everything. To explain the current circumstances, I must delve into my family history. I was raised in a Connecticut suburb in an upper middle class household. My mother, Phoebe, 56, taught at a private high school until she left 6 years ago. My father, Richard, 58, is a corporate lawyer at a reputable firm. My younger sister, Ashley, 30, has always been the star of our family. Favoritism was evident from my earliest memories, though my parents would strongly deny it. I remember getting straight A's on my report card when I was 8, while Ashley, 6 at the time, received B's. My achievement was dismissed with, "That's expected of you," while Ashley was praised, rewarded with ice cream, and told she was trying her best. Throughout our childhood this pattern continued. Ashley's minimal efforts were celebrated, while my accomplishments were expected and often ignored. When I was 15, I spent months working on a design project for a national high school architectural competition. I stayed up until 2:00 a.m. most nights preparing. When I placed second nationally and won a minor scholarship. When I brought my award home, they barely looked away from the television, replying, "That's nice," before turning their attention back to Ashley's dramatic account of almost scoring a goal at her soccer match. Despite the obvious bias, I excelled in school and extracurriculars. I led community service projects, maintained a 4.0 GPA, and was student body president. Meanwhile, Ashley's behavior became increasingly troubling as she approached adolescence. When I was 14, my parents told me to keep a better eye on her after she started sneaking out. At 15, she was caught stealing high-end makeup. Instead of addressing her actions, they blamed me for not sharing my allowance with her, as if that would have prevented the theft. The most frustrating part wasn't just the favoritism, it was the expectation that I should prioritize Ashley's needs over my own. At 16, I saved $3,000 from my part-time job at a local design firm to attend a summer architecture course at Columbia University. But my parents borrowed the money to pay for car repairs after Ashley, who wasn't supposed to be driving, crashed her boyfriend's car. They promised to reimburse me, but never did, costing me the opportunity to improve my college applications. Despite these setbacks, I gained admission to a top architectural program. To save money, my parents let me live at home during college, but mostly because they wanted me to help manage Ashley. When I tried to talk to Ashley about her behavior, she brushed me off. One night, I caught her sneaking back into the house at 3:00 a.m. on a school night. When I warned her about how her actions could affect her future, she snapped, "Stop trying to be mom. Just because your life is boring and all about buildings doesn't mean mine has to be." At 17, Ashley started dating Tyler, a known troublemaker. My parents, who scrutinized everyone I dated, were surprisingly lenient about him. When I voiced concerns, my mother accused me of being jealous of Ashley's social life. 6 years ago, Ashley, then a high school senior, announced she was pregnant. The father was Tyler. I'll never forget that night, Ashley sitting on the couch, defiant yet scared, my father pacing the living room, and my mother crying uncontrollably. Somehow, in the chaos, my parents blamed me for not keeping a closer eye on her. The next morning, my mother told me I had to move out to make room for Ashley, Tyler, and the baby. She insisted it was the best way for me to support my sister during this difficult time. When I protested, pointing out I was in my third year of college with a 3.9 GPA and a part-time job. The next day my father coldly informed me they couldn't pay for my tuition anymore. That money, he said, was needed for Ashley and the baby. As I packed my things, he handed me a list of local women's shelters just in case. I spent the next 4 months living in my car, showering at the campus gym, and working 2 jobs while maintaining my GPA. Family members refused to help, saying they didn't want to get involved. Through sheer determination, I graduated with honors and landed a job at a prestigious Boston firm. Over the next 6 years, I built a successful career and life. I designed a home for myself, my sanctuary. I met Nathan, who has been my rock. Then, last night, my mother called after 6 years of silence. She initially pretended nothing had happened, asking about my life. I foolishly started sharing my achievements, but then she revealed her true purpose. They wanted me to return to Connecticut to support Ashley and her 4 children. I stared at my phone long after the call had ended, my chest tight with a mixture of anger, disbelief, and the faint ache of old wounds reopened. The past 6 years had been a grueling journey of survival and rebuilding, but they had also been a quiet triumph, a testament to my resilience. Yet here I was standing in the kitchen of the home I had fought so hard to create. The conversation replayed in my head like a broken record. My mother's voice, casual at first, asking about my life. She had even sounded proud when I told her about my promotion and my upcoming wedding. For a brief, fleeting moment, I thought maybe she was calling to reconcile, to acknowledge the pain of what had happened and apologize. But then, like always, it turned back to Ashley. It was always about Ashley. Your father and I are just too old to handle 4 young children, she had said, her tone laced with that familiar mixture of guilt tripping and entitlement. You've done so well for yourself, sweetheart. You're in such a good place now, and Ashley, well, Ashley just hasn't been as fortunate. Fortunate? That word sat heavy in my chest. Was that what they thought, that my success was some twist of luck rather than years of sacrifice and unyielding determination? When I didn't respond immediately, she pressed on. You've always been the responsible one, Ashley, and the kids need family support right now. It's not like she has anyone else to turn to. I wanted to scream, to remind her of the countless nights I spent starving, shivering in my car, wondering if I would even make it to graduation. I wanted to throw her own words back at her, the way she had dismissed me, abandoned me, handed me a list of shelters like I was nothing more than an inconvenience. But instead, I swallowed it all down, my voice cold and measured. I'm sorry, Mom, I can't help you. Her silence on the other end of the line was deafening. I could almost picture her sitting there, clutching the phone, her lips pressed into a thin line of disapproval. When she finally spoke, her words were sharp and cutting. You're being selfish, you know that family is supposed to take care of each other. I ended the call shortly after that, my hands trembling as I set the phone down on the counter. Nathan came into the room moments later, his brow furrowed in concern as he took one look at my face. He didn't ask what was wrong, he didn't need to. He just wrapped his arms around me and held me as the storm inside me raged. Over the next few days I found myself oscillating between anger and guilt. Rationally, I knew I had every right to say no. I owed them nothing, not after what they had done. But the emotional pull was still there, buried deep. A part of me, the part that still yearned for my parents' approval, whispered that maybe this was my chance to finally prove my worth to them. Nathan was my anchor through it all. He reminded me of everything I had overcome, of the life I had built for myself, and of the importance of protecting my peace. You don't owe them anything, he told me one evening as we sat together on the couch, his hand warm and steady on mine. They made their choice 6 years ago. You don't have to set yourself on fire to keep them warm. His words stayed with me, a quiet mantra I repeated to myself whenever doubt crept in. Then, a week after my mother's call, I received an email from my father. It was short and to the point, written in his usual clinical tone. He reiterated their request for help. Attached to the email were pictures of Ashley and her children, a desperate attempt to pull at my heartstrings. The photos showed Ashley looking weary and disheveled, holding a toddler in one arm while another clung to her leg. Two older children sat on a worn-out couch in the background, their faces blank with an innocence that didn't yet understand the chaos around them. I stared at the images for a long time. The children weren't to blame for their mother's choices or my parents' enabling. They were innocent, caught in the crossfire of a dysfunctional family dynamic they had no control over. But as much as my heart ached for them, I knew I couldn't let myself be pulled back into the toxic cycle of my family. I had spent years clawing my way out of that darkness, and I wasn't about to let them drag me back down. I deleted the email without replying. A few days later, I received another call, this time from Ashley herself. Her voice was strained and desperate as she begged me to help her. She insisted she had changed, that she was trying her best to provide for her kids but couldn't do it alone. She didn't apologize for the past, didn't acknowledge the pain she had caused me. Instead, she framed her plea as though it was my duty to save her. I listened silently, my chest tight with a mixture of sadness and resolve. When she finally stopped speaking, I took a deep breath and said, "Ashley, I hope you find the support you need, but I'm not the person who can give it to you." The line went silent for a moment before she let out a bitter laugh. "Of course, you've always been selfish." Her words stung, but I didn't let them break me. I ended the call and blocked her number. In the weeks that followed, I focused on my work, my relationship with Nathan, and the life I had built for myself. The calls and emails from my parents eventually stopped, though I knew the resentment would linger on their end. For the first time, I felt a sense of closure, not from their forgiveness or reconciliation, but from the realization that I didn't need their approval to validate my worth. My life was my own, and I had earned every bit of it. And for that I was finally at peace. Months passed, and life returned to a semblance of normalcy. My wedding plans with Nathan were in full swing, and I had thrown myself back into work, pouring my energy into a groundbreaking project that had the potential to redefine sustainable urban living. I was finally feeling the weight of my past lift, the scars dulling into distant memories. One brisk autumn evening, as Nathan and I were enjoying dinner on our porch, my phone buzzed with a message. I almost didn't check it, assuming it was a work email or an update from our wedding planner. But when I glanced at the screen, I froze. It was a message from an unknown number. "I'm sorry for everything. I don't know what else to do. Please meet me. I'll explain everything. Ashley." I showed Nathan the message, my hands trembling. "I don't know if I can go," I admitted, the tightness in my chest returning. "You don't have to," Nathan said gently, his brow furrowed with concern. "But if you do, I'll be there with you." The next day, against my better judgment, I agreed to meet Ashley at a diner on the outskirts of Boston. When I walked in, I almost didn't recognize her. She looked gaunt, her face hollowed, and her hair unkempt. She wasn't holding a child or surrounded by chaos like I had imagined. Instead, she sat alone at a corner booth, her hands wrapped around a cup of coffee she didn't seem to be drinking. When she saw me, her eyes filled with something that looked like relief and fear. I sat down across from her, my stomach churning. "I know you didn't have to come," she began, her voice quieter than I remembered. I didn't know who else to turn to." Her words were a torrent of explanations, apologies, and fragmented confessions. She admitted to making terrible choices, to taking advantage of our parents' favoritism, and to failing her children. But then her tone shifted, growing darker. "I didn't tell you everything before," she said, her voice trembling. "About why Mom and Dad kicked you out, about why they really chose me over you." I leaned back in my seat, my heart pounding. "What are you talking about?" Ashley's eyes welled with tears. "It wasn't just about the baby," she said. "It was about Tyler. He told Mom and Dad that you were the reason he got into trouble with the police. He said you were jealous of me and tried to ruin his life." I stared at her, my mind reeling. "That's insane. Why would they believe that?" She hesitated, her gaze dropping to her coffee. "Because I let them. I didn't want to face the consequences of what I'd done. I thought if I pinned it on you, they'd keep protecting me." The weight of her confession settled over me like a suffocating fog. My parents had believed a lie Ashley had allowed to fester all because it was easier for them to blame me than confront the truth about her. "I thought I was protecting myself," she continued, her voice breaking. "But I destroyed you in the process. And now I've lost everything. Tyler's gone. The other fathers are gone, Mom, and Dad are drowning in debt trying to help me, and the kids, they deserve better than me." Her words were a mess of regret and desperation, but I couldn't find it in myself to feel pity. Anger surged through me, but it was hollow, like a fire that had burned itself out. "I can't undo what I did," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I needed you to know the truth. I needed to tell you that I'm sorry." For a long moment I said nothing. Then, finally, I stood. "Thank you for telling me," I said, my voice cold and steady. "But that doesn't change anything. I've moved on, Ashley, and I think it's time you learn how to do the same." I walked out of the diner without looking back, the chill of the evening air biting at my skin. Nathan was waiting for me in the car, his expression filled with silent understanding as I climbed into the passenger seat. "Are you okay?" he asked softly. I nodded, though the knot in my chest told a different story. "I think I will be," I said, my voice trembling but resolute. As we drove away I realized that Ashley's confession, while devastating, had given me something I didn't know I needed: closure. The truth, as painful as it was, freed me from the last vestiges of guilt and doubt that had haunted me for years. For the first time I felt like I could finally leave the past behind. But the knowledge of how far my family's betrayal had gone would stay with me forever, a reminder of just how much I had overcome to build the life I now cherished.